Hey, checking in with Chapter 2 of Galore, a novel, I can't remember what year right at the moment, by Michael Crummey, set in 18th century Newfoundland, all kind of centered around Paradise Deep. And yes, Chapter 2, um, we're sort of jumping ahead, probably that 5 years that Absalon is away, and Mary Trevine kind of grows close to the albino Judah, close in a kind of a pet, I guess, way, with a dog that's also kind of a pet, who's kind of his closest companion is Judah, who doesn't talk. In this section, we get Father. Oh, what the hell's his name? Father Asshole, who is Protestant, come over and kind of institutes religious war. He sees the place and thinks, oh fuck, oh god. He actually, a pregnant woman takes his hand and puts it on his belly, and the next day she's dead. And it turns out not married, and the child, lives, but it's like not a great start for him, I guess. If it was supposed to be a blessing, she dies and he's born, and a bastard, as they say. He sees the local cemetery, and it's like we have to put up a fence around it, which sort of, and on the consecration of the grounds, he says, like, basically now it's only Church of England that can get buried here, and none of the vestments of the church will get used on anyone who isn't Church of England. And this really has hard feelings with the Catholics around, and there's kind of semi-religious warfare over this, people throwing rocks and stones, and to the point where people who are participating in the parades have to bring clubs to kind of knock out stuff that's getting tossed at them, stuff like that. So there's all that. Mary has become kind of the much wanted woman, at 14, 15, of men asking her to marry her, because I guess there's about 3 men for every woman, and then there's less women that are actually of marriageable stuff. So she gets quite known that way. Her latest suitor is a captain who hadn't even really been thinking about sex or about about getting married or anything like that, but suddenly he's heard of kind of Mary, and decides that she is the woman for him, and goes over and proposes, and she's like, no. And he's like kind of crushing his hat, and she's tries to make his case, but she's like not having none of it. And her brother Lazarus has grown up enough that he can start throwing rocks at him. And he's like, you little bastard. And he drops his hat, and Lazarus grabs his hat, and he kind of goes off to get drunk. And there's a kind of a get together, thing they're having. They're still in kind of fairly flush times. The newcomers, not being aware of Judah's kind of good luck status, they just assume it's sort of always been like this. And the guys who have been there start to think it's like their own hard work that's kind of gotten all the good stuff. And Sailor, the captain guy, he gets roused by his friends and taken to the get-together, and what does he see? He sees Judah standing in front of Mary with his hat on, making some kind of a dumb show, and them laughing, and he thinks they're making fun of me with my own fucking hat. And so he goes for him. He goes for them. The dog, kind of savages his stockings. A gun goes off and does things, and the dog is dead. and the and a sailor, a soldier is dead, apparently killed by his own knife. And so they think it's one of these brothers, but they can't identify which brother, and no one will vouch for who is who and all that stuff. And in the end, Judah is the one who doesn't have a family, doesn't have any protectors, so they take him into custody. And because they can't try a capital crime in Newfoundland, he's going to have to get taken to England to get prosecuted, which, as Lazarus thinks, as a 6-year-old, it's like that's good as a death sentence. Might be as good as a death sentence, anyways. And so they get together at King Me's house to discuss it. The father, the one of the kind of the commander of the thing, King Me, and her, and the widow divine, and the widow divine kind of comes in, looks at the situation, goes like, this is familiar. King Me does not like that, and we learn in a flashback that he had accused her of witchcraft, and they had indeed sat in very much the same configuration where he had yanked in a young boy, a couple of years, widow divines, junior at this point, and tried to get him to kind of lie that she'd conjured ill words over fish and poisoned them, and had put his cows off, and all that. Cows that, I guess this is the cow, and all his cows after that were all gave shitty milk and were kind of skittish and all that. But the commander basically went, so you say you watched this woman poison your master's fish and stuff? Oh yes. And you didn't actually tell them? And he kind of looks at King Me. He's like, no, I didn't. So you're basically an accomplice? And he starts bawling and saying, oh, I didn't mean that. And they meet up later, and this is Peter Divine. And it's just like, she's looking for, like, can you fish? It's like, yeah, of course I can fish. Well, did you fish with a woman? It's like, I don't have a boat. Yeah, it's one thing at a time. And they end up getting married, and that's why she is the widow divine, because this is her husband, who by the present day of the story is dead. But what they end up doing at the end is because he's got no one, Judah has got no protector. He's basically, there's no family that's going to stick up for him and stuff like that. So what the widow divine does is they defrocked, what turns out is a defrocked Dominican Catholic priest, Callum, gets him to row him out to where Judah is, and marries Mary to him, Mary to Vane. And so now, and it turns out that, and Mary is actually his granddaughter, the granddaughter of King Me, because when King Me did finally find someone who would marry him, he proposed. Did I even say that? He proposed to the widow divine, and she told him, "Nah, I'm just pissing. Fuck off." And they had a good ball out fight, and that's how she ended up leaving, and all this bad stuff happened, and he accused her of witchcraft. Jesus, terrible way of explaining it. At least I'm getting it in my head. But so he it turns out that, now that they're related. Judah is married to his granddaughter, and hopefully that will cause there to be, and they're pregnant, and she's pregnant. Am I pregnant? You're pregnant. Yeah, we'll hope for the best. And it's like, okay, so This doesn't make any sense to anyone other than me who is saying this, but that's fine. That's fine. Um, so they've joined Judah in marriage to the thing, which is interesting because they've had a couple of things now about what does Paradise Deep mean, and they have a couple of soldiers talking about it. One of the soldiers dies and says Paradise Deep. This puts me in mind of fucking, and it's like deep in paradise, deep, you know, plunged in a woman's privates, I guess. Um, there's that meaning. And then King Me has got the thing about Paradise Deep because he was given this kind of a post to like he could set things up how he wanted it to be. He was being successful in St. John's, but he thought it was squalid and he didn't like it. And he wanted his own place to make in his own image. And it's like the name's Paradise Deep. And it's like it's so deep you'll never be able to get at it. And when he saw the widow divine birthing Judah out of the whale, he thought, and it's white, this unknowable whiteness. It was like it was nature on two legs. It's just something that he would never be able to kind of get at, hold, control himself. So there's that kind of nature, that thing of Paradise Deep, which is still got kind of a fairly feminine thing to it, of him being a guy who's so not in touch with his own nature. He didn't even know he was attracted to the widow divine. He thought he was like he had had worms and like and headaches and stuff like that. He didn't realize it was just his own kind of attraction to the widow divine. So he's so cut off from it. And so it's like his own nature he's so cut off from, but yeah, just like the nature of this world around him, he's completely divorced from, but wants to control it, wants to try somehow surmount it, but it's so beyond him. It's Paradise Deep. So yeah, that's what we've got so far with chapter 2 of Galore by Michael Crummy. And I will talk to you later. More videos later.